Welcome, Entre Nation, to the next installment of the Millionaire Secrets show. I'm really excited about today's episode. I'm here with a new friend of mine who is someone that I've lightly stalked from afar for a while. Omar Ellatar, am I saying that right?
Ellatar, yeah.
Ellatar, Omar Ellatar. I see his name all the time, but I've never actually said it out loud. But anyway, I'm here with Omar, and Omar is an absolute stud. If you have been hiding under a rock for the last couple of years and don't know who he is and haven't seen his incredible growth and his incredible interviews, you definitely need to check him out. And we're going to get into how he's done what he's done, which is just outright amazing. So, Omar, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks so much for having me on, Jeff. I'm excited to be here, and I appreciate the intro, man.
Yeah, for sure. So, as I was kind of prepping you, like selfishly, as somebody who is a little bit newer to the YouTube game, newer to the podcast game, newer to the interview game, I am super eager to know how you've done what you've done. You know, I've been what I would say more of a behind the scenes marketer. So I've been online for 12 years now, but I would say until a year and a half ago, not only had nobody even heard of me outside of my small little world, but I wasn't even out there trying to be heard of. Yeah. And just in the last, year and a half, I've really kind of started to try to crack into this audience building and public authority building, but I haven't even scratched the surface compared to what you've done. And from what I can tell, you've done it pretty quickly, right? I mean,
yeah.
Is that, am I right? I'm seeing just over the last couple of years, it seems like your stock has just exploded.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, man. I went from, I think it was like 4 years ago, I was totally broke. I was working at Tesla. And I think I was like a lot of people, like trying to find a sense of purpose and significance. I hired a coach. His name was Dave. Shout out to Dave. Paid him a couple $100, which at the time, coaching was a foreign thing to me. I invested in that, and we drafted up a plan to take massive, urgent action. And yeah, man, things happened pretty fast. I went from getting one interview to another, and they just started, from the Tom Bilyeu to the Grant Cardones to the Ed Milet's to the billionaire John Paul DeJoria to being flown out by Tony Robbins, and it just sort of boom, boom, boom. Before I knew it, I was on Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street's podcast, and it just seemed like I got sucked into this vortex just because I took massive action. And yeah, I mean, relatively speaking, it happened pretty quick. I mean, probably last 2-ish years.
Yeah. So usually when you hear that, and I've had people say this to me, it's like, oh, Jeff, certain things have clicked pretty quickly for me, but it's like, they haven't really clicked quickly at all. I've been doing this since 2008. I've been laying groundwork. I've been, doing some different things, but like, I'm not at all an overnight anything. Right. So for you, like it actually happened that fast. I mean, a couple of years or a few years is still a long time, but
yeah,
you clearly, when you say you took massive action, I mean, that term gets thrown around a lot, probably to the point of abuse.
Right.
You really took massive action, clearly, because it's not an accident.
Yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of people will say that, but to be honest, for me, I was in such a place where, to save the whole hero's journey, it's true. And I know it sounds generic, but I was really in a rock bottom place and I wanted to get out and I didn't know how to, and I think, I don't know, you can probably relate to this, Jeff. When you started, it's like, you think like, oh, maybe that's possible for me to do this epic thing, but you don't know if you can. You have limited beliefs. Could I really do that? Right? You see other people doing that. You think they have something you don't. So I was loaded with a lot of that. But to be honest with you, the reason that I started taking massive action is because the fire inside was so hot. Because in that rock bottom, I had an ex-girlfriend who actually broke up with me. And that was the first girl that had ever dumped me. And believe it or not, man, and I tell this story, I shared it on Jordan Belfort's podcast, Wolf of Wall Street, but I share this all the time is, my ex-girlfriend, broke my heart. And at that time, it was like, there was 3 things she loved more than anything. It was hot Cheetos, Grant Cardone, and she loved working out at the gym. So she loved Quest bars, Quest Nutrition. So I was on a mission year 1 to interview the creator of Hot Cheetos, the creator of Quest Nutrition, the billion-dollar entrepreneur, Tom Bilyeu, and Grant Cardone. And wouldn't you know, I got all 3. And those interviews ended up being the most watched and downloaded interviews in the world on YouTube and podcasts. So that taught me crash course all about, SEO, keyword tags, all that. So I know it sounds spiteful, but at the time, I've obviously that was only the first 6 months or so that drove me. But, at the time that drove me to really all right, you don't want my time? Well, I'm going to show you who wants my time. I'm going to inspire the world, and I'm going to make sure the world gets to see this. So I learned YouTube, I learned podcasts, I learned how to network, how to get past gatekeepers. I had zero experience with any of this stuff, but the pain of that, the why, so to speak, just drove me to insane levels of action, man. So I was pretty resilient.
I mean, dude, I think that's amazing. And I'm happy to confess that to this day, so when I started in 2008, I started online, and same thing, man. I was at absolute rock bottom. I look back and I say, I've been saying it for 12 years. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. When you get so far down, the harder the surface underneath you that you're getting smashed against, the stronger you are when you press against it, right?
True.
If you're trying to do squats on a trampoline, super awkward, but you're trying to do squats on a concrete foundation, which is what rock, it's called rock bottom. It's made of rock. You can press up really hard, right? If you exert yourself. But anyway, so 2008, when I started, I was in a ton of debt. And actually, it's funny you say that. My wife, I was living with her parents, and because I got kicked out of our apartment and I was a loser, and I felt like this broke loser, and I felt like her dad thought I was a loser, and it's like, why did I even let my daughter marry you? And now you're back in my house. And to this day, 12, almost 13 years later, and I'm not married to her anymore. That didn't even last a year, and I'm remarried. I'm super happy, and I have no residual feelings, but I think all the time about running into him again.
Yeah.
And be like, what's up? Remember when you told me I was arrogant? Remember when you told me your daughter could have done better? What's up? I think about it all the time. It's actually humbling to admit that. But now, so I got to ask, have you seen her since?
It's funny. We spoke. I think it's fair to say I got the last laugh on that one. But there was a moment that was pretty unique. I used to wish that one day I would have a moment to just a subtle moment, kind of I guess how some people would imagine winning an Oscar or something and be like, how do you like me now, kind of thing, right? Which kind of what you're saying. And there was a moment on the podcast. I remember me and her one time watched The Wolf of Wall Street, and because I was talking about wanting to do something, but kind of like most dreamers, you talk about something for 3 years before you actually do it, right? Yeah, I should get on YouTube. Yeah, I should do a podcast. Yeah, I should get online marketing, but you never take the action. So it was funny because I did have a moment, since you asked, where when I was on Jordan's podcast, he in the middle of me telling the story, he got a good kick out of it. And he's like, well, is there anything you want to say to the camera? So I looked at the camera, The Wolf of Wall Street, right? This is my moment. And I just said, how do you like me now, Emily? And then Jordan Belfort and me just had a good laugh. So, there have been little moments like that. And I shared the story not to make her feel weird. I wish her the best. Kind of like you said, I don't harbor any animosity. It was just, I was at a low point, and that just fueled the fire. But we have spoke, we have connected, and I feel I've done good with that pain I turned into power, And like you said, it ended up being the greatest gift ever because it drove me. I don't think, had we been together and had I got the girl, I probably would have still been making 50 grand a year, 60 grand a year at Tesla, trying to figure out how to get promoted to sales manager,
Yeah. I look back and to your point, it's not about the ex or the ex's dad. It's just about adversity in general, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
It just, I think you reach a point, and I say this knowing that a lot of people that are probably listening or going to listen to this are in a place of adversity, right? Let's face it, you go on the internet listening to inspiring podcasts or watching inspiring interviews, it's probably because you're looking to be inspired because you got some shit going on, right?
Right, exactly.
So let's assume people are hearing this and that they can really hear from both of us. Mm-hmm. Your adversity will turn into, like you said, the fuel of your fire, and you will end up being grateful for it if you do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's one concept, and I mentioned this briefly earlier, is when I hired my coach, Dave, and since then I've had tons of coaches. I mean, I just cut a check a couple months ago for 100 grand to a mastermind. You know, I very much believe in coaching as it's changed my life. I'll never forget, he said something simple, and this is why coaching is powerful. It's not about getting a bunch of stuff from a coach. It's about getting the key things that really make the shift. You know, all you need is a little thing that just one little shift can explode a whole new, and I'm sure you've seen in your business and in your life. And I'll never forget that one shift for me was when my coach said two things. You know, Omar, what would happen next if life was perfect? After I told him about the breakup, he said, congratulations, man. I'm so excited for you. And I was like, what the hell? What do you mean congratulations? He's like, she just cleared the way for you to live your perfect life. So let me ask you, you know, what would happen next if life was perfect? And I was like, whoa, like, think about it, Jeff. How many times in life has anybody ever given you permission to dream if life was perfect? I think most of us all assume that, well, we're going to have to settle somewhere in the relationship, in our business, in our time, in the job. Like, well, maybe it sucks. I'll just keep the job a couple of years, or maybe it'll get better, or, you know, and of course it never does. We just get more bitter, you know, most of the time at least. And I'll never forget, that was the first thing, because he gave me permission to think in terms of ideals, not in terms of settling, which sounds simple, but it's not. And the second thing that really changed my life, to speak to your point, is that he said, nothing in life has any meaning except the meaning that we give it. And I just remember it hit me like, it was like a bullet to my soul. It was like, nothing in life has any meaning except the meaning that we give it. So that meant in that moment, I rationalized in my head this. I was like, oh, okay. So if that's the case, then in spite of the fact that I'm sure you can relate, you know, I'm heartbroken, I'm devastated, I'm like pissed, I'm frustrated, I'm overwhelmed, but at the same time, I'm like broke, right? At this time, there's just so many emotions, and feeling like the one person that I wish was there for me, like, left. I was like, oh man, I have nothing. I have so much internal just unease that I said, you know what? I get to choose if this means if this breakup means a breakdown or a breakthrough. I get to choose what I do with this. And so we wrote down, what are empowering meanings I could use this for? How could I use this? What's good about this? What's the blessing? And little by little, man, I'm telling you, Jeff, those words on paper, man, I still have the notebook. I still have, and it's funny, it has dried water spots because there was tears running down my face as I was writing it. You know, I wrote down this list. You know, I see myself doing this. I choose that the meaning of this, that I'm going to prove to her that I'm the man. I'm going to prove that I can be financially independent. I'm going to inspire millions of people. I'm going to make millions of dollars. I'm going to interview and I just wrote down this thing. Mind you, I have a 2013 Corolla. I'm $30,000 in debt, overweight, broke, lost the press. So I'm writing pure fantasy here. And lo and behold, man, you know, I look at my life today and the trajectory we're on and the mission we're on and the team I have, and those words have literally popped out of the page and into my life and into reality. So you nailed it on the head with a hammer, man, when you said it's like you get to choose to use the pain or you can let it use you, you know. But because I took action and I used it, it made me a better person. Like you said, you know, I pushed against the concrete, and thanks be to God, I looked around and things worked out kind of nice, man.
So yeah, I mean, I resonate so much with what you're saying. I definitely think I'm older than you. Yeah. But it's almost like, it sounds like about maybe 8 or 10 years before you were going through that, I was going through my version of the same thing. And it's true. And I'm sure you've experienced probably a similar challenge as to what I experienced, which is that since you've been in a position where you essentially have overcome this challenge, right? You've had your crucible and you've emerged victorious, so to speak.
Right.
You are seen, and you see other people, and you're seen by other people who are kind of going through their version of that. And I assume you probably get hit up 100 times more than I do. People say, what do I do? You know, here's what I'm dealing with. How do I overcome? Oh, yeah. And you know, you have probably mass. I have time. I've been dealing with this for 12 years since I kind of started to get my game together.
Right.
And I try so hard. It's almost like I feel like I'm trying to convince people.
Yeah.
Your pain is the source of your greatness. Your challenge is your adversity is your opportunity to grow in ways that you never would otherwise. Lean into how unbearable it feels so that you will never settle for it again.
Yep. True.
And it seems like a few people really hear me, and everybody else kind of just doesn't. They kind of just move on. And it's like, how do we bottle it and serve it to people so they get what you're saying?
It's very interesting you say this, Jeff. I know exactly what you're talking about. I get emails. Part of my morning ritual, which I've learned to be careful with, is we get a lot of fan mail. We got a lot of messages and emails and stuff like that. And I remember in the beginning, it would put me up, and I realized the challenge is if you get too addicted to that or too high on that, then when you don't get that, or when you get a hater, or when you get some, and you get low, Yeah. So I've learned to calibrate that a lot better. But the one thing I will say that's a common denominator, every morning when I peek in there or whenever I do, I find that there's really, there's a lot of people, but I think the way I talk to my team about this, even when we hire people or bring them on board to work with us or in partnerships or whatever, my criteria is based upon my principle that I've learned from connecting with people, and it's really twofold. And I say, there's two types of people. One is the type of person that life happens to them, and the other person is that they happen to life. Mm-hmm. And while there's micro, variations and distinctions you can make of each of those, I firmly believe that at the end of the day, you're either living in a dominant space with your actions in one mindset or the other. Again, either you are happening to life or life is happening to you. And typically what happens is when most people aren't winning, they think that life is sort of having one on them, that life is beating them. When in reality, kind of like they say the expression that light isn't the opposite of dark, it's the absence of it. And so I think that a lot of times the reason that people aren't winning in life, or at least in a momentum, everybody goes through hard times, man. I have plenty of friends, and I'm sure you do too, who've made $1 million online, boom, lost it, went into debt, and now they're trying to find the next thing, right? Mm-hmm. So this illusion that you hit success and it's this just invisible field of indefinite greatness is unrealistic. It's a roller coaster. It's a journey for everybody. Everybody has their own challenges and trials and tribulations and ups and downs. But in reality, I find that the way in which I try to advise most people is to try to remind them through however I can that they happen to life. And it's so important to remember that you are larger than anything that can happen to you. Even if it's not true, adopting that belief is going to empower you to take a lot more action, to be a lot more resilient, to find ways to use the pain, to find ways to prove people wrong, to find ways to, think about it. Like, I've sat down with people that I never even would have dreamed of. When I sit down with John Paul DeJoria, 44th wealthiest man in America. Talk about, people say billionaire. This guy has founded not one, but $2 billion companies. At 37, he was living in his car. Yeah. So when you meet people like that, the creator of Hot Cheetos, he's become a good friend of mine. He was a janitor making $3 an hour. Now the guy's financially set many lifetimes over. Everybody loves Hot Cheetos. And when I meet them, it's almost like it's very hard for me to feel. I feel sympathy and empathy for people, but pity is very challenging because I don't care what your situation is, man. I've been with people who are broke, lost, depressed, divorced, in jail, had their parents killed, lived on the streets. We're janitors. We're losing at 40 and 50. I've had people at every age, every scenario, men, women, whatever. And if they could do it, and they're from, all over the world, it's not like they're privileged to be born in an area. Sometimes they are, but not always. Some people were born in Mexico. Some people are third world countries. And I'm sure you've seen it too. Immigrants go on to do phenomenal things that people here kind of are more lax and don't push as hard because they have a little bit of comfort. So, long story short, that's really just a long-winded way of saying that, I firmly believe, and I try to tell people that no matter where you're at in life, you control your destiny. Your actions and the meanings that you give the experiences become the experiences. And one of the most beautiful things about interviewing, and why I love helping people do it, and we have courses in coaching, and I know we talked about it earlier, but the reason that I love doing that is because I love seeing people light up, man. Not only does it create content and build brand and create all that, but when you meet people and interview people, it almost, and I'm sure you found this, Jeff, I certainly have, it almost re-energizes you and re-inspires you to keep like, oh, damn, like there's a whole new level, there's a whole next level. And I think that's why so many people look at guys like us or others and say, man, how do we do it? How do we do it? Because they want that. They just kind of don't know how. So, that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah. So I love something you said, which is, oh, God, I just love it. You said, it actually doesn't matter if it's true.
Exactly.
You're just better off doing it that way.
Yeah, they did a study. I heard this thing from Tony Robbins, and I forget the math exactly, but something to the effect of they did this study at a really prestigious university. And they studied people who were, quote unquote, dominant optimists versus pessimists. And they found that the pessimists were much more realistic, but over a 10-year span of tracking them, that they made a far less income. They were far unhealthier. They had higher levels of divorce because they were realistic.
Right.
This was the study's focus. When in reality, the delusional optimist, he may be totally wrong, but you only have to be really right once to really justify a lot of those wrongs. I mean, you have to be delusional to think that. I mean, think about Elon Musk. You think he's a realistic pessimist? You know, there has to be a certain.
He's actually probably clinically insane.
I believe it, man. I believe it. You know, but I mean, he's able to produce results. And so if you look at anybody who's successful, they always did something a little bit unconventional. I mean, you know, I talked about earlier that getting interviews with these people, a lot of people say, Omar, how do you do it? To be honest with you, I don't even logically know how, you know, but what I do know is that I made it so intense inside of me that it just had to happen. So because I made it intense, I was willing to send the email. I was willing to write the thing, call the gatekeeper, leave the voice. I was just willing to do the work. And, you know, when people ask me how I do it, you know, and I break this down in my courses and trainings and all that, but like a lot of it is having a compelling reason of why, like seeing how that fits into what you're doing. And so I would do unreasonable things, man, things that don't make logical sense, things that a delusional optimist would have had to. I'll give you an example. Just real quick, those three, you know, Grant Cardone, perfect example. And this was, keep in mind, this was like 3 years ago. So now more and more people are starting podcasts and doing stuff. And I'm partially probably responsible for that to a certain degree. But, you know, it's like people weren't doing this. I didn't have a training. There wasn't really podcast courses 4 years ago. I didn't know how to network or get in touch. And I keep in mind, I'm broke. I'm not a millionaire. I'm not a rich guy. So I'm a nobody who just wants to interview epic people. It's a huge leap of faith. I mean, that right there is delusional optimism number one. Delusional optimism number two is I was in LA and I said, okay, I want to interview Grant Cardone. This is when Grant really popped off 3 years ago, really exploded. I was like, man, I would love to interview that guy. So I was like, he's in Florida. I'm in California, right? Polar opposite sides of the country. So I said, you know, most people would look at that and go, okay, cool. I'll just leave it at that. Or maybe one day or maybe over Zoom or, you know, down the road or whatever. But no, I had to prove the girlfriend wrong, right? I had to be a delusional optimist. So I saw that he was in vacation in LA in Beverly Hills. And that's a couple hours from me, probably about 2 hours, but in LA traffic, probably like 4 hours. Right. And so I saw that he was in LA and Beverly Hills. And one day I was watching their Instagram story while they were in Beverly Hills. True story, man. I share this. A lot of people trip out on it. True story. I was at home and, you know, not doing too well. I had quit Tesla and I started a little production company. So I was a little bit of momentum, but nothing really was popping off for me. And I see on his Instagram story that he is going to dinner in Beverly Hills. And I hear him talking to his wife, Elena, and they're like, hey, Elena, do you want to go to, you know, X restaurant in Beverly Hills at 7? What time do you want to go? And I faintly hear on her Instagram story, she's like, oh, let's go at 7:30. He's like, okay. So it's very faint. It's very like subtle. Nobody probably caught it. But in my head, I'm like, boom, this is my chance, right? Delusional optimism, step number 3. Believe it or not, Jeff, I drive 2.5 hours to Beverly Hills, try to catch them. I saw that they were at a gym first. So I'm like, okay, cool. I know where that gym is. Boom. I go to the gym. By the time I get there, I walk in and, you know, pretend I'm going to accidentally bump into them and ask them to interview them. Right. That's the plan. I go to the gym. I look at his Instagram story. They left. And then that's when I saw they were at the restaurant. So the restaurant was the second part of it. So then I was like, damn. So I drive 2.5 hours to the gym. They're not there. I drive 2.5 hours back. I get home. That's when I see the dinner thing. So I'm like, all right. Should I drive back again? God, this is so stupid. This is so dumb. It's not going to work. Like, this is retarded. You know, but I've already spent 4.5 hours. I'm like, you know what? The day is almost gone. Might as well commit. And that one action, Jeff, changed my life. I drove back again to Beverly Hills. So now I'm like 6 hours into these Beverly Hills trips in my mind thinking like, oh my God, this is stupid. I can't believe this is what my life has come down to. I'm in my mid-20s. How is this my life right now, you know? I'm by myself, drive down there, and I find the restaurant. I scope it out. They're not posting anything on their Instagram story, so I'm like, oh no, I hope I didn't, you know, come to the wrong place again. Mm-hmm. So I end up scoping out the place. You know, I put some cologne, try to like dress up, look the part. It's a fancy Beverly Hills restaurant. I had no business there. Park my Corolla outside, you know, around the corner. Couldn't afford the valet, so I park around the corner. I don't want them to see the car. So I pull up. And I go inside and I pretend to ask the lady. I say, oh, I have a reservation. And, you know, they're coming in a little bit or something. Can I use your restroom? So she's like, sure. Walk in the restaurant. Keep in mind, like, so much delusion going on here.
Oh yeah.
Walk in the restroom, and the restroom's in the back. So I'm like kind of scoping out the place, but not trying to be obvious. Just I'm looking for Grant. I'm looking for the voice, the signature voice. Don't see him. I'm like, damn it. So I go in the restroom, and I look at, and I remember this, Jeff. I go in the restroom. I wash my face, and I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm like, dude, like, you need to get your life together, man. Like, can you believe? Like, I can't come down to this. So I'm like, all right. So on my way out, I'm like, you know what? I accept defeat. Like, I'm going to go home, maybe get a job, like really just try to cut my losses here. So I'm walking out at the very corner of the restaurant by the bar. I see him and Elena having steaks and wine and, living it. And I'm like, they're here, right? So the inspiration turns back on. So I'm like, all right, I scope out the exits, go outside, and I wait. And Jeff, I wait about 2 hours for them to get out. And I'm like, I'm on the restaurant to the side. I'm not waiting in front. I don't want to be, a creeper. So I'm waiting down the sidewalk a little bit. Every time the door opens, I'm thinking, is it them? Is it not? So my heart's beating, and then it's not them. Then someone else opens, my heart's beating, and then it's not them. So I have adrenaline. So I'm getting depleted of all adrenaline right now. I'm nervous. My mouth's dry. Like, there's just so many things. And finally, lo and behold, they come out of the restaurant. I pitch them. We end up talking. And he's like, dude, I told him the whole story. I'm like, dude, I drove down here just to take a photo with you. I'd love to interview you. I know I have a small podcast. I'm just starting. I know you would normally say no. I brought up all his objections before he did. I said, I know you would normally say no. I know I have a small podcast, but Grant, I drove down here. You're a huge inspiration to me. Would absolutely love to interview you on the show. And consider me the young man you once were who's just looking for somebody to give him a shot. I had been preparing the pitch, right? I had been preparing this whole thing. I had all day. So he's like, all right, dude, I like you, man. I'll do your interview. So lo and behold, 2 days later, we filmed the interview. And, within a month, it was the most watched and downloaded interview in the whole world on YouTube and podcasts and all that. And it just blew up. And, that's just one story. And then since then, Grant's been on the show 3 times. He's become a client of ours. We film a lot of his content for YouTube. And, we've helped Grant a ton. And it's crazy because I did that for him. And now he's become a client. He's become a friend. He has my number. It's surreal how stuff like that has happened dozens of times over. I mean, I'll give you a quick, I know that was a long-winded one, but I'll give you 2 more quick ones. Tom Bilyeu, DM'd him 12 times on Instagram. He didn't respond to any of them. Lo and behold, that one extra time, that one little extra push, the 13th time, he was just like, hey, Omar, so sorry. I just saw this. Sure, here's my assistant's number. Here's my address. Can you come on Tuesday at 4? I was like, cool, did that. So there's 2 in the bag. Yeah. Third one was the creator of Hot Cheetos. I messaged him probably 15 times, didn't respond, ignored it, said no finally at the end. So I went to a speaking event, found that he was actually speaking at an event months later, approached him at the stage, and he said no, but thank you. Second time I went up to him, he looked at me, he goes, dude, you don't give up, fine, I'll do your interview. And not only has that interview got on to be the most watched and downloaded interview in the world with them, but it actually became the premise. It's because I love interviews, and I developed this real passion for storytelling, and this is why I love to do what I do. But that interview ended up getting almost 500,000 views, and Eva Longoria is set to direct a movie based on his life, and they're writing the script. They have the script writers working partially off of our interview, so that's informing the narrative of the thing. So, I mean, to think that in any way, and he told me, he was like, hey, dude, Eva Longoria, he'll call me. And he'll be like, dude, Eva Longoria's coming to my house. Can you believe it? He's like, yeah. I'm like, dude, you got to connect me. So to think that all these things would happen, I'm telling you, it's delusional optimism will cause you to take actions that realistic pessimism just will not.
I could listen to this all day. I feel like, I mean, I have videos that I've been making back when, I get like many hundreds of views, sometimes maybe a couple thousand views. Now, I'm not like a big deal, but I'm talking back when I was getting like 7 views and 12 views. And I literally am ranting about unreasonable optimism.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter about my YouTube business. Every juncture of my life that's inflected me up to the next level has always been founded on unreasonable optimism. I call it delusional either optimism or enthusiasm and unreasonable self-confidence, right? Which you just embodied to a T. And I love it, man. I love it. It's the fabric. It's the thing that you cannot teach.
Right.
You can try to inspire, but I don't, that's the thing. I think about, when I was in in my 20s, I wrote a music. It's like, I have these stories. You have the stories. I have the stories. But to try to inspire people, that you've got to create those stories. And I remember back to when I was creating my version of those stories, and I'm sure you can experience this. And like you said, when that moment when you were looking at yourself in the mirror, like going, what are you doing, Omar?
Right.
Like, what do you, those are the moments when your life is created.
Mm-hmm.
The moment when you go, what are you doing? And then you go, yeah, just take one more shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Or send one more direct message. Just,
Yep.
Yeah, I know you're crazy. Okay, you're crazy. But just try one more time.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it still doesn't work. And you go, but just one more time.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, and you know what else? You know what else I've found? I've found that there are certain things in business and in life. It's interesting. A lot of times people say, especially in the online marketing space, they say, hey, would this idea work? Or what could I sell a course like this? Or could I do this? Or could I do, people have these like desires. But I firmly believe that when you look at the people who win, there was many logical reasons potentially that they could have not won.
Yeah.
And I found that a lot of times, more than the idea, it's that person's conviction in the idea. They say, in online marketing and in business, certainty wins,
Yeah.
And a lot of people have a hard time being certain about what they do. But yeah, man, to speak to your point, I was just so delusionally certain that I was willing to do it, that I didn't care if anybody watched it. I wasn't doing it to build brand. I was doing it to prove a point to a girl, So to me, it was like, and by the way, I don't know if she's ever watched it. I'm sure she has, but that was irrelevant. It was more about proving to myself that I was the type of person who was worthy of, whatever at the time was in my head. I was worthy of my dreams and goals, my aspirations. So yeah, man, delusional optimism. And the way I put it is imperfect action. That is the best way I can explain it. And because I've tried to rationalize and reason. I think I'm a pretty phenomenal communicator, not because I'm so great, but because I really worked on it. And I got to tell you, man, no matter how great and fluent I could speak French, if someone doesn't speak that language, they'll never get it, right?
Yeah.
So the one thing I always tell people is take imperfect action. And as you get better and better, hire coaches and people, those actions get a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. Pretty soon you're phenomenal at what it is that you do, and people will pay you handsomely for it.
I'm sure you've heard that quote from Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba.
Yeah.
That's super offensive to a lot of people, where he says, poor people fail because their whole life is about waiting.
Mm.
And he has, it's a big quote, and I love it. I honestly love it, not because I read it and I go, ha ha, poor people suck. I read it and I go, he's right. And therefore, don't ever do those things, Jeff, or this could happen to you too, right? I mean, you were poor before, it could happen again. Like, don't wait. Don't be a skeptic. Don't invest in all the reasons why something isn't the right move. If you feel it, follow it, right? And as you're talking, I'm like, that's what I was thinking is like, yeah, it's you did the opposite of waiting. When you were talking about life happening to you versus you happening to life, waiting is life happening to you. And so you're waiting for it to change and happen to you differently so that then you can seize the moment. Like, the moment's now. And this all sounds like a bunch of rah-rah motivational stuff. And what I try so hard to convince people, or to inspire, I've stopped trying to convince people. I try to inspire them to this perspective, is that it's not a tactical or mechanical conversation. If somebody says, I want to get Omar's result, the answer isn't, okay, well, you need to hire this person and you need to book this interview and you need to have this, you need to set up your YouTube channel this way. And it's not like paint by numbers.
Right.
If you want to get Omar's result, just be like Omar. Be insane. Right? And people hear, I think people hear that and they don't quite believe it. And so I'm really excited that there's like somebody else saying it. Like, I think you're just as whacked out and crazy as I am. And it's amazing,
Yeah. And I appreciate that. And I think too, as I meet more and more incredible men and women who've done amazing things in life and business, you start to notice patterns, particularly that I have the good fortune of doing them in person a lot. And you notice little temperamental things that you wouldn't maybe notice over a Zoom where you hop on, hop off.
Yeah.
Because I'm in the office, I'm in the space, I hear how they talk, I hear how they think, I hear the first thing they say when the interview's done, I hear how they, was I okay, was I not, you know? And there's a couple of patterns that I noticed about a lot of them. Number one, they're all incredibly, it's very interesting. They have a duality with emotions. They're all, number one, incredibly emotional. But let me explain. When I mean emotional, they're emotionally convicted in what they're doing. Very emotionally convicted in what they're doing. And the second thing is they're very good at emotionally managing the downside. When things go bad, they lose a ton of money. You know, I mean, you know, when you're with a billionaire, I mean, they have days where, you know, something could go wrong. They lose $5 million. They eat it, and he has to live with that. At that scale, they get used to those numbers. But certainly, there are, no matter what, that hurts. You know, for any business at any scale, and it happens all along the way. So one thing I've learned is that they're emotional masters, and I think that really, I have seldom found, and I'm sure you could agree. I have seldom found a successful entrepreneur or an accomplished entrepreneur that is not a phenomenal manager of emotions, at least to a large dominant capacity. I mean, sure, there's people who go crazy, but to a certain degree, you have to learn how to manage your emotions because the deal's not going to happen. Someone's going to quit on you. Your CFO, or someone's going to screw you, or someone's going to take your money, or at some level, some of these things can and probably will happen, especially as you grow and grow and grow. So if you're not emotionally calibrated resiliently from day one, when you're broken, just starting and, you know, watching this stuff and getting inspired, if you don't build that muscle now, you're not prepared for what it is that you want. So I heard this beautiful analogy, and I'll kind of wrap up the point with this, is it's kind of like a caterpillar, right? Caterpillar goes into cocoon. And when it's in the cocoon, it's wiggling, right? Now, ultimately, it wants to wiggle to be a butterfly. The parallel here is that most people in life who have dreams and goals and ambitions but feel stuck are in a cocoon of their own, right? And they see all these, you know, successful people or people living their dream. And they're not just about money. Maybe it's freedom, maybe it's relationship, whatever it is, right? The butterfly effect, right? And they're in a cocoon and they're wiggling right now. And they see other butterflies flying around. They go, man, I want to be that one day. What they don't realize, Jeff, and very important for people watching or listening to pay attention to this, because this analogy really changed my entire perspective, is that when you're in a cocoon, did you know, Jeff, that there is a big portion of caterpillars that actually never make it out of a cocoon because they stop wiggling and suffocate? And interestingly enough, the process of a caterpillar wiggling inside of a cocoon, as it wiggles, it's actually building muscle. And the exact muscle, wouldn't you know, the exact muscle, the exact point, and they did a scientific study on this, you can Google it, the exact muscle required, the exact precise muscle required that grows from wiggling, from that process of keep wiggling in that tight spot, is the exact amount of muscle required to not only break through the cocoon, but actually support the wings so that it can actually fly. Think about how profound that is. That means that in the process of somebody wiggling and struggling, instead of giving up and dying, if you keep wiggling, even if you're in a cocoon, you just keep trying, like you said, taking that one more action, that one more wiggle, that one more attempt, sooner or later, that's going to build a little bit of muscle and a little bit of muscle and a little bit of muscle. And then one day when you break through, or you start the business, or you start making that money, well, now you would have had the muscles to support you to do it on and on and on, not just barely make it out of the cocoon. But most people see the cocoon as their whole world. They don't realize that they need to earn their way out of their situation. Does that make sense? They can't just think their way out of it. So that's been a profound analogy that for me, I try to leave with people that, you know, keep wiggling, keep wiggling. Yeah. The muscle's being built.
And I've never heard that, which is beautiful and profound. And I will hopefully never, I don't think I could forget that because it's such a deep, you know, metaphor. But what I have heard is that if you see a butterfly struggling to get out of the cocoon, don't help them because like you think it's related to that. The strength needed to break through the cocoon is the strength. It's what develops the strength to move their wings.
Exactly. But
and so you don't help them.
Exactly. They don't see that. You know, to somebody helping them, they might go, oh yeah, I'm just going to alleviate this stress. But resistance is what grows. I have a mentor. His name is Dr. John DeMartini. He has a perfect line. He says that maximum growth occurs at the intersection of support and challenge. Again, maximum growth occurs at the intersection of support and challenge. If you lift a weight, Jeff, you seem like a pretty fit guy. If you do curls with a pen, nothing's going to happen in your muscles, right?
Right.
Same thing in life. It's like people go like, well, that's too heavy. Well, good. That's it, lifting. It's how it gets a little less heavy. you know, there's no way around it. The weight's not going to change because you don't want to lift it. But the more you lift it, the more the weight will change. You just have to be willing to lift it long enough for it to change.
So I have two questions, and I know you have a hard stop in about 7 minutes. So I'm going to try to cram in my questions. Very selfish here. I want to know two things.
No problem.
First one is, what you're describing is something like you alluded, it was something that was present in you before you got the result. Mm-hmm. So even when you were broke and even when you were sitting on the couch, you had this potential energy, maybe waiting for a catalyst or waiting for the right timing that you could tap into to say, I'm going to, it's like when Omar gets on fire, he burns hotter than most people, for whatever reason. So my question is, do you have any insight on how you got programmed that way? Is it just your DNA? Is it something that happened to you? Was there a mentor or an inspiration when you were young? Like, how'd you get that way?
That's a great question, Jeff. You're actually a great interviewer. I've sat down with some of the best. You're pretty damn good, brother. So great job.
Thanks, for real.
I would say it's conditioning. I don't think I necessarily, I wasn't raised in an entrepreneurial household. Although, it was there was definitely like standards and goals and ideals and, rituals, and there was definitely high standards. But at the same time, for me, it really started when I was a kid. I remember, I think I was like 10, 11 years old. And this is the first time I ever thought, oh, I could live my dream. And I remember it. I never let go of that, Jeff. I was 11, 10 years old. And, we went to a soccer game. I played soccer when I was a kid for about a decade. And I'll never forget, we were at a soccer game. It was me and my dad. And I remember seeing soccer players on the field. And that was the first time that I had ever seen someone that was like on TV in real life, right? Somebody that I was like, I fantasized on TV. Oh my God, I'm watching a soccer game and they're in real life and like they're real people. And I remember being fascinated, like, oh my God, millionaires are real people. Like millionaires, like they can, like, I remember telling my dad, like, they're real people. Like, does that mean that if I work hard, I could be one of those people? If I do something, I could move circumstances to be there. I don't know how I worded it at 10 or 11 years old, but I remember thinking that thought. And he was like, yeah, like the difference is they just kept doing it. And I just like, whoa, like very simple. Mm-hmm. But I remember thinking like, whoa. And from that moment on, man, anything I did, I wanted to be the pro. I wanted to be the best at that. Not from an ego place, but just from like, I wanted to give my all to it. I respected so much when I would read Michael Jordan interviews or interviews about masters of their craft where they slept with the ball or, they ate, they slept, ate, drank the thing. That's all they talked about. That's all they thought about. They had posters in their room. That was very much me. First was soccer, later was skateboarding. And I was like, I want to be a professional skateboarder. I want to travel the world. I used to have friends in school and I used to tell everybody I want to be a pro skater. I'd have chicks come at school and like, I'd pretend to sign autographs. Like I was delusionally wanting to live that dream. I wanted to go on tour. I wanted to sign autographs. I wanted to do what I love for a living. And I didn't aspire to be a doctor, a lawyer, or teacher, or, any of that stuff. I aspired to be somebody who gets paid to play. And and Jeff, I got to tell you, man, I spent so many years trying different things. I knocked doors and solar door. I tried everything. And like you said, I had this potential that wanted to live a dream. I just didn't have the vehicle. I didn't have the vehicle. And when I found the vehicle, I made a promise to myself. I said, I've failed so many times. I remember, dude, I made a promise to myself in my mid-20s. I said, the next vehicle I find, pardon my language, but I'm going to fucking kill it. Like, I'm not going to let it go. I'm not going to be casual. I'm going to be the fucking man at that thing. And when I found that thing, I just beat the hell out of it. And I still continue to this day. And now I help people do the same thing. So, it's amazing. And that's the best way I could put it, man. Conditioning.
Yeah. So you just actually segued exactly into my next question, which is you made a decision. You say, when I get on in this groove, when I find my thing, I'm going to be the best at it. Right. And it's not about being better than everybody else. It's being the best means you're going to be your own best version of whatever that thing is. Right.
Yeah. I think the best way to language it is I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to give it everything I got. No
regrets. Right. So obviously there's more to having, a thriving business like yours, doing the things that you're doing than just, hey, I landed a couple interviews with a couple big names and it all just happened, right?
Right.
There's a lot. I mean, I run a YouTube channel. I'm trying to build a YouTube channel right now. I know how much science there is to it. You know, the way you title your videos, the way you write your descriptions, the thumbnails, just the keywords, the research.
Right.
There's a technicality that is baked into your success. I know that. How did you learn that? And I don't expect you to tell me how you do it per se. I'm sure you have a training on that, but like you clearly became a technician as well as, you know, great in the other areas. How did you learn that? And yeah, I mean, tell me more about that.
Yeah. So initially, and don't worry about time. We're good. So
okay.
I'm happy to add some value here. So
yeah,
it's interesting. When I started, I think like most people, they just kind of create content and throw it up there. And I think that's good. I actually recommend people do that just to get over what I like to call publish anxiety. You get the ball rolling. That's the first phase of any content creator's process. The next evolution is step 2, and that's called optimization. And you learn to be strategic. So for example, I thought like, oh, you just put it online, and if it's good, people watch it, right? Yeah. And maybe that was the case on YouTube, 7 years ago, 8 years ago.
Right.
But people started getting really savvy. Now you're competing for attention with the next graphic designer's thumbnail, and now you're competing with SEO and titles and keywords and tags and descriptions. And YouTube, interestingly enough, actually scans video and can pick up words. So if you say real estate a lot, or finance, or money, it'll rank higher in keyword tags if people are searching for it. And a lot of people don't know this. They think like, oh, just put the video, put it up. But in reality, how many videos have you ever clicked on that it wasn't because of the thumbnail or the title? Never. That's why everybody clicks on videos on YouTube. And I like to tell people that on YouTube, every book is judged by its cover, and it's judged very, very fast, and you're competing with everybody else's book cover. So one thing I learned, and I had no formal training, so we really dug through the trenches, me and my team, and we would just hash out and experiment. This thumbnail, what about that thumbnail? What about this title? I mean, we became mad scientists, trying stuff, testing. I just had Russell Brunson on the show, and he said, the best people ask me questions all the time, and he goes, but the best marketers will tell you they don't really know. Just test. You just got to test. You don't know what ad is going to work. You don't know what product is going to work. But some people launch one course and it doesn't work, and they say, oh, this thing's not that hot.
Right.
But you launch 10 different courses, 2 or 3 of them make you a couple $1 million, changes your whole life, and now you got a resilient attitude, right?
Yeah.
So it's really about taking, again, massive action. But for us, we just experimented, and so I learned there's a couple of things, just some practical takeaways for your audience. So number 1 is the thumbnail. Thumbnail is integral. You want to ideally have things like close-up faces. Right, the more close-up a face is, the higher click-through rate you usually have. Second thing is you want to have animated expressions. You don't want to have stuff that's like simple and safe, especially as more and more people, as you notice patterns of people starting to do stuff, you got to move away from that. So it's a constant evolution. I think graphic designers creates a huge opportunity for them and an interesting challenge at the same time, because you're competing for attention. So essentially, number 1, your thumbnail should have emotion, right? A close-up expression of emotion. Number 2, you want to have ideally 5-ish words on the thumbnail that relate to your point. Another thing too is story, right? Like for example, you'll notice a lot of our interviews are like from broke to $1 zillion, from living in my car to this, from $100,000 a year to $100 million a year in 5 years, or obviously those are extremities, but it doesn't have to be about money. It could be whatever, but to some capacity, a story, a journey. With Frank Kern, I think the title is How a Used Car Salesman Became the #1 direct response marketer ever, right? Whatever it is. So things like that do really well, because you got to understand when people are scrolling through a phone, if you just put, and I'm not saying you do this, but I'm just saying if you put, Jeff Lerner, episode 2, the Jeff Lerner podcast with Tom Bilyeu.
Right.
When you're scrolling, who's going to commit 45 minutes to that versus like, a guy asking, 20 girls what they look for in a guy, or, or how to make 6 figures in affiliate marketing in a month, or whatever, right? Not that those are ideal things to look at, but I'm just saying that like, you have to, for lack of better expression, you have to have a clickbaity idea that their mind can grasp in a second. And the more you do that, the more you notice patterns. Those are the other things. Now, keyword tags are also very important, meaning when people search stuff, YouTube is the world's second largest search engine, and it's owned by Google, which is the world's first largest search engine.
Right.
So you got to realize, like, a big portion of our stuff doesn't actually come from subscribers. So subscribers are great, but what you really want to win on, and what we help clients with, is getting suggested and recommended. Because when you do that, now you've got infinite amounts of seeds of possibility. So I'll give you an example, Jeff. Let me ask you a question. In the last 30 days, have you seen something that was recommended to you on YouTube that was 10 years old, 10 months old, 10 weeks old, 10 days old, and 10 hours? In the last 30 days, have you been recommended stuff from YouTube that was from all those time zones?
I would guess yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's exactly right. And most people would probably say in the last week, if not a couple days, because see, with Facebook and Instagram, on the other hand, when you post on Facebook or Instagram, all that effort, all that time, all that energy you put into creating content, don't get me wrong, it has a certain value, but after 24, 48 hours, they want more.
Right.
Your audience wants more. Ed Milet called me a couple months ago. I'll never forget it. He was like, dude, I'm maxed out on my ability to produce content. Like, I'm sick of it. Like,
yeah.
You know, and I'm like, here's Ed Milet calling me. If he's feeling it, we're all definitely feeling it. You know, it's constant pressure to create content. And a lot of times you're not always monetizing it right away. You know, you could do, lookalike audiences and retarget people and stuff like that. There's ways to go about that in online marketing. But in general, you're really just giving value for free. And that takes time and effort. And it takes away from your business, and it takes focus, and resources, and investing. But in the long run, it's one of the smartest things you can do, because that's what's going to differentiate yourself in the marketplace when everybody else isn't.
Yeah.
And you nail it perfectly. You were talking about digital real estate. I love that. But my point about it is that, like, everyone feels content overwhelm, but one of the most powerful things you can do is, when you're creating content, is learn how to rank, because YouTube is a search engine. So when people search how to do this or how to do that, your stuff comes up. And the more and more people click on it, the more you're telling stories. You get all these little wins over a 30, 60, 90-day thing. I'm telling you, your views will go up way more than you logically think you even deserve. And I know that's an interesting way of putting it, but I'm telling you, dude, 4 years ago, I'm smoking joints in a car, lost, trying to figure out my life.
Right.
I would have never imagined that I would have one person listen to an interview, let alone 2 or 100 or 1,000. Or now, we're over 6 million, approaching 7 million listeners on the podcast. So I never would have even thought that was remotely possible. But believe it or not, stories do a phenomenal job of really hooking people. And I think most people really don't capture stories in a really compelling way. So to recap, if you can tell a story, have a compelling thumbnail, have a title that illustrates, from X to this, right? From this to that in some capacity. If you can optimize your keyword tags so that people, and I'll tell you this, there's 3 things that people go to YouTube for, the 3 top things. Number 1 is music. Number 2 is comedy and entertainment. And number 3 is to search how to. Mm-hmm. There are tens of millions of people every single day searching for how to do things. If you become the guy that they find when you're searching how to do this or how to do that, or say you offer a product or service or business or course or whatever, and you're the guy or gal that's in their top rankings, and they click on you, well, more and more they're going to start seeing recommendations from that. And those seeds, instead of like Facebook and Instagram that only have 24 or 48 hour windows, on YouTube, those seeds are going to exist a year from now. We make money today from videos we put out 3 years ago.
Yeah.
2 years ago. Whereas with ads, don't get me wrong, paid traffic has a phenomenal place in online business, but you're essentially renting the at-bat, the possibility to make sales and drive revenue. And that's why you're finding a lot of the legends. I've had Frank Kern on the show. You're seeing the Frank Kerns, the Mike Dillers, the Russell Brunsons, who are traditionally only kind of playing it conservative in online marketing and saying, hey, I only want to put $1 in when I can guarantee money back.
Right.
Realizing the power of like, oh, no, I need to build brand. So now, you have people changing their tune a little bit, and I get it. Because when you build brand, those videos are going to get recommended over and over. And so now you're creating, like you said, digital real estate for this year, next year, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And that audience is going to come with you. So maybe you, down the road, maybe pivot your business model. Maybe you change your business. Maybe you have a new product or a new service. Mm-hmm. Well, now you have a huge body of audience that will come with you instead of just renting traffic that dies the second your campaign or your ad budget dies, right? So it's really this long-term approach that I recommend people think about when learning how to optimize and grow out their content.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're talking long-term. I own a company, Entra, that teaches digital business.
Mhm.
And it is my never ending constant frustration of people coming in with the mindset that because it's the internet, it should be fast. You know, like, because I mean, I agree, internet connection speeds are fast, 12 megabytes per second. That doesn't mean you're going to get $12 per second, right? Like, the internet's still real business, and it takes time. And I love, that's why I came up with this digital real estate term. And you're just a great example. I mean, I won't ask you the numbers, but I have a sense based on, you have 116,000 subscribers. I can see how many views you have. Yeah. I have a rough idea of the quality of your content and the CPM that it generates, which is the revenue share that YouTube gives you. And I assume you monetize your interviews.
Yeah. So I'm happy to be transparent about even that stuff. Like, so for ad revenue, and this is one of the most interesting things we learned in optimizing our stuff. So ad revenue for us hovers anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000 a month, which relative to our other business stuff isn't that much. But hey, $4,000 to $8,000 a month. Yeah,
but it's an annuity, dude. You're going to have it for the next 30 years.
Yeah, I'll take it. I mean, dude, that's the mortgage payment for a lot of people. I'll take it. So, I mean, that alone is powerful. But here's the other thing: is in interviews, and this is why I love interviews. This is why I love teaching. This is why I have courses. I work with clients. This is why I love it. Interviews are actually, Jeff, the best way to retain audiences long term. Here's why. YouTube favors long format content. And we've seen the shift with YouTube where in the last couple of years, I don't know if you remember, but 5 years ago plus 10 years ago, YouTube was 3-minute videos, music videos, 5-minute videos.
They wouldn't let you upload longer than 10 minutes. You had to get like special approval, right?
That's right. That's right. I actually remember that. That's funny. Yeah. And, and then it gradually made the shift to 10 minutes and then 12 minutes and 15 minutes and 17 minutes and 20 minutes. Now you have 45-minute interviews, hour-long interviews, right? Mm-hmm. And so really what's happening is that YouTube is favoring long-format content over everything else. So they pay the most. They recommend you the most. They give you the best shot at bat, the biggest benefit of the doubt if people click off. I have a lot of friends who are, YouTubers that make millions and millions of dollars. That have millions and millions of views that are not making millions and millions of dollars. And I'm making more from them on YouTube. Now, granted, that's not even remotely close to our primary sources of revenue. Of
course.
But hey, man, I'll take it. And again, it's because YouTube favors long format content, and particularly in business, because people are bidding for keywords related to online marketing, business, real estate, finance, things like that. So it's very attractive to advertisers when you're interviewing entrepreneurs, because those are their ideal customers, right? The types of people that would watch that type of stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's been awesome.
And again, I want to be sensitive to your time. There's one thought I have that I would like to share, and I would like to get your thoughts on, and then if you're cool, we can wrap it.
Sure.
Talking about kind of going back to the aspect of story. You mentioned storytelling, how effective that is as a content format. I think that we have to. I'm always trying to look for things that are general principles that inform how we deal with the world, but also that we can turn on ourselves. Mm-hmm. And if you think about how inspiring stories are to others, and how inspiring, even in you and me talking here, the thing that's inspired me the most about this is your story, right?
Thank you, man.
So we need, I think one really helpful thing for people that are trying to get over that hump is to allow themselves to be inspired by their own story. And to start to look at their own struggles or their own challenge or wherever they're at as, okay, maybe this is the first or second chapter of my story.
Yeah.
And you start to objectify yourself and almost step back from yourself and see. And the best way I found to create that arm's length, almost like an existential step back so you can see yourself in that way, is to start documenting your story.
Yeah.
So when you're down and out, don't go, oh, I'm so down and out. Go, oh, thank goodness. Because someday I'm going to want to have before pictures.
Yes.
So let me take a snapshot of me eating ramen on the floor, right?
Yeah. Dude, actually here, I'm going to show this to your audience real quick, because it's so funny you say that. I took a photo in 2016 with my ex-girlfriend. She took it of me, and it says Nostalgia Pictures. September 19th, 2016, I wrote, so funny you say this. I wrote, the good old days to look back at and always remember where you came from. I'm totally broke here. Yeah.
And
look at that.
Exactly, man. And the thing is, if you don't take those pictures, you will regret it so much.
Yeah, dude, I'm sitting on the floor broke. I remember we were eating cup noodles, and I was like, hey, snap this photo. I think
you don't even have a door on your closet.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it was funny. It was it's been a crazy journey, man, and it's
Did you have that context back then?
I did.
This is my before phase.
I did. I took photos. I used to screenshot my bank account. I didn't know that a bank account could be negative, in the thousands. I didn't know. I never saw that. And, I'd have a red bank account. I had, at one point, Jeff, I had 13 overdraft fees. Nice. 13, so I racked them up, my friend. I was trying to figure it out. And by taking action and investing in myself, was able to turn that around and now help other people be able to do the same thing as well. So it's the greatest gift, man.
That's amazing. My last year before I got started, I had a negative $40,000 tax return.
Holy.
Because I made 40 grand a year, but I managed to lose 80 trying to start businesses, and that can be negative too. So
quick question before we wrap up is, when you first started, did you struggle for a couple of years, or did you kind of have some wins?
When I started online, I got quick wins, but I was 28. I started my first business when I was 16.
Gotcha.
So I got my butt whooped for 12 years as an entrepreneur, and many of them, they weren't technically online businesses, but they were businesses that involved online marketing.
Got it.
And so I had a big learning curve and crash course through that, but it was all just getting my ass kicked left and right.
Yeah.
Anyways,
cool, man. No way to it, but through it.
Yeah. Amen to that. Well, dude, I really appreciate, sorry, I get so casual when I start to feel like someone's my friend. I'm like, what's up, dude? But no, seriously, man, I've really enjoyed this. This is amazing. I feel like a kindred spirit here, man. The unreasonable enthusiasm and optimism and just making these crazy bets on yourself. I love it. So thanks for your time. I know you got something else coming up. You got to go prep for it. I appreciate you. And I know that my audience is going to get so much value out of this. I don't even have to wonder. Just thanks for being here, man. I look forward to reconnecting too.
Awesome, man. Very cool, Jeff. I appreciate it. Thank you for being one of the passionate few. And if you guys enjoyed this interview, message Jeff. Let him know how you enjoyed it. And if you guys want to follow me, you can follow me at Omar_the_Rockstar on Instagram, at Omar_the_Rockstar on Instagram, or check out any of our interviews on the Passionate Few. And I hope they inspire you to live your dreams, and get in touch with us and let us know, how we can serve you, or how any of our interviews have touched your life. So thank you, Jeff, for allowing me to share my dream with other people as they pursue theirs.
Of course. And you can tell that I'm still just getting the hang of this, because it's like, I didn't even do the call to action to go follow Omar. But yeah, I've recently started following Omar, and his content is amazing. And I'm going to make sure that below this video and podcast, there's a link to, would you rather be your YouTube channel or what?
Yeah, we can my YouTube channel, Instagram, whatever.
Okay. Whatever. Awesome. Well, thanks again, man. I've really enjoyed it.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much, Jeff. You guys take care of yourself, and keep inspiring. Keep fighting the good fight, brother.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. We'll see you.
Cheers, Jeff. Talk soon.